Welcome to the Blessed Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Raquel Tolson. This podcast is here to help you experience being blessed that transcends a mere hashtag. Now, I'm a firm believer that being blessed is a mindset, and we have to make a daily decision to be blessed. So if you're ready to be encouraged, enlightened, and entertained, then you are in the right place. I'm broadcasting on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network, a nonprofit charitable radio broadcast with the mission to empower, encourage, and educate. If you're enjoying the Blessed Podcast, please go and donate to www.wytv7.org to help further our mission. Now, today's podcast is sponsored by Tolson's Publishing. And for the month of Raytober, because y'all know it's my birthday month, for the month of Raytober, you can go and get any of our books. If you spend $20 or more, you will get free shipping. We're going to be like Amazon, baby, like Amazon Prime. You ain't even got to pay the $200 a year. You'll get free shipping. All right. So it's my birthday month. So, you know, I've been talking about stuff that, you know, that I like to talk about. My guest today is, I know y'all gonna be tired of me. I shouldn't even tell y'all that this is my cousin, because we don't have the same last name, but I know y'all probably listen to like, is she always bringing on her family? Well, I got some awesome family members. Let me just tell you, that's why I bring on my family members. Well, my cousin, Mark Melvin, and Mark is awesome. He is awesome. He is now living in Houston, Texas, which he left LA, left me here all alone in LA. And I think he's headed back to New York, which he's going to be even further away from me, but it's cool because I love visiting New York. So I can't wait actually till you go back to New York for real. Because I might not come in the wintertime like I used to, because I think I'm getting too old for all that cold. You need to come to LA and visit.
Right.
Yeah. So Mark and I are going to talk about my book, Undefiled. We are going to break some things down that I didn't break down last year when I talked about Undefiled. Mark actually helped me write the book. He was like, he read it and he was like, Ray, no, you need to say this. So I'm going to read the section actually that Mark wrote a little bit later. But anyway, welcome to Blessed, Mark.
Well, thank you. I'm blessed for being here.
You are. You woke up feeling blessed. Okay, so let's just get into it. And let me ask you this question. When you read Undefiled, what did you think? Like, first thoughts?
Initially, I thought, you know, that the timing is really appropriate to really start talking about, you know, something that has been so taboo, particularly just in the world in general, but more so that really perplexes our communities, particularly communities of color. And I think that the timing of, everyone saying that we are really wanting people to live their best life. What does living your best life mean? Living your best life is also being the true, authentic you. And in a time where, you know, we have so many different movements that are saying, you know, these lives matters, this life matter, we realize that all lives matter, even though they all take on different types of civil rights movements and missions. So this, I think, really falls into that whole category of, why am I being judged based on my differences or my interest or different interests that I might have, whether it be in terms of nationality or sexual orientation? I think that the timing is right, because all of these things need to be married together, because what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And for people to be ostracized based on their interests, I think that now that we're at the table talking about equality then I think that this is definitely a subject matter that falls into that category.
Okay, so now for any listeners out there that haven't read the book, first of all, you need to go to www.tolsonbooks.com and get the book Undefiled. You got to get it. But spoiler alert, if you don't want the spoilers, then you might want to stop watching it and, or stop listening and tune back in after you read it. But the book is basically about a woman who is ready to get married, and she finds somebody who just makes her feel loved, special, just adored. And she, the whirlwind romance, he's good to her, he's good to her son, everything is perfect until the night before the wedding, and she finds out that he's bisexual. Now, before I wrote the book, it was a short film. And I actually showed the short film at a church. Now, the women, every last one of them, not one person said that they would have married this man. Every last one of them said, never in a million years would I marry a gay man. So it was just eye-opening, but he's bisexual. Isn't there a difference between bisexual man and a gay man? I believe there is, but won't you shed some light on that for me, Mark?
Well, I think it's how one defines himself. I don't think that it's necessarily based on sexual orientation. I think it's how one sees himself. A gay man may say that he is committed to and interested only in being with someone of the same sex. Whereas a bisexual man may say that he has sexual feelings of intimacy for someone of the same sex, but may choose a life partner that is opposite sex. And on occasion, those feelings or that intimacy may occur with him of someone of the same sex. But the title itself is something that is onerous of the person how they define themselves. So it's not how someone else sees themselves, because one having an intimate relationship or a sexual relationship with someone of the same sex does not necessarily qualify them as having the label of being bisexual. So again, removing the labels and understanding the behavior and interests really, speaks volumes into how people are defined.
Yeah, and it is just really interesting to me that people want to put people in boxes, and then I made a statement to some people, Hollywood, I live out here in LA in Hollywood, but Hollywood has made bisexuality in females very sexy. Like that's almost like men, heterosexual men almost dream about, seeing two women together, right? But with bisexuality in men, it's almost like, no, a man can't like men and women. They're just confused. And I just think that is so horrible that we like to put people in boxes, even outside of religion, just in society, period. We like to put people in boxes, and especially men are not allowed to explore their sexuality. Whereas women, you think about like college, women, they talk about, well, in college, I had this experience, and people are like, oh, that was just, or if a man said that, they would be like, oh, you gay. It's like there's no exploration. There is nothing, it's not available for men of color anyway.
Well, I think you touched on three critical things of how people see sexuality or bisexuality in particular. One, people see it through the lens of the public and how the public is more accepting of one particular gender versus another gender. Then I think that you speak about something where there is actually a conflict. Bisexuality is actually one of those areas in development where there's actually a conflict between identity and identity crisis. So that's an area where most people may move towards being someone with the same sex or going back and forth, but there lies a conflict. And and there lies an unresolved conflict that I think that most people are confused by. Generally, people who are in that, and there's not an understanding of it, like you talk about in your book, there's a lot of hurt behind it. There's a lot of hurt behind it. And there's a lot of shame that follows that as well. There's shame on the part of the person who was not aware of the feelings of that person towards another person. And then there's shame that they not that they were aware, but they were caught up in that. So so again, we're talking about conflict. We're talking about how people celebrate it, how people say that they're turned on by it. I think that there's a lot of shame with women, and then there's a lot of regret, because I think a lot of people who are in relationships or heterosexual relationships who may or may not have had experience with someone of the same sex, there's a lot of regret that they feel like those experiences that they've had, they kind of look back and go, well, where would I be now? You know, I'm still feeling the same way that I felt 20 years ago. You know, in fact, that, you know, although I chose this life truly, you know, in search of happiness and more contentment in your life, people say, you know, I'd probably be better off had I chose, you know, the individual that I really love, because that was truly the love of my life. And I think that sometimes I think that's where people are, is that people have true love for someone, but it's societal constructs that pushes them towards something that creates the conflict for them.
Well, Mark, you said a lot, because there are some cases in right now, not cases, but, you know, Niecy Nash just married a woman. She just married her best friend, which everybody was like, what just happened? She was just divorced her husband, and Niecy Nash, who used to always say that, you know, women should wake up and get her husband's PJs, you know, to keep them happy and all this stuff. She was very, very vocal in her sexuality in her marriage, right, with her husband. And then, just when she came out that she had married her best friend, you know, a woman, it was very shocking. And then we had another case over in Florida where, you know, the governor, the guy was running for governor, and he was on Tamron Hall, and he said that he identified as bisexual, you know, and it's like, what? Everybody's like, wait a minute. And when I started the book, people used to ask me, where did you even get that idea? And I was like, this is not unusual, people. This is something that's happening all the time. It's happening everywhere. This is not unusual. But it's like, you know, we, especially in the church, we have made having being intimate or loving the same sex like the biggest sin that you could ever do. I mean, bigger than murder. So I want to talk about that a little bit, like the hierarchy of sin in the church. And why do you think, you know, and why do we put homosexual over every sin that there is? Why do you think?
Well, because I really believe, and this is no attack on anyone's faith or religion, I really believe that we grow up, you know, as children being taken to church and hearing the things, we grow up having that rigidity in our lives. We grow up hearing the scripture and having those things reinforced upon us. And somewhere along the line, we eventually evolve and we start to see the world differently. We start to read differently. We start to interact with people differently. And we realize that we are being put in a box, and that these are constructs that we didn't choose, but these are cultural influences or familial influences that have caused us to behave and act the way that we do. And out of fear of retribution, we tend to do things that are pleasing so that we're not outcast. And that's what generally happens in the church. The people that's sitting on the pew, their pews are coming there for the same reason. That's the common thing. They're coming there for a message of hope. They're coming there for, a breakthrough, for whatever trials and tribulations they might be going through personally in their lives. But at the same time, when you talk about the hierarchy of sin, the greatest is one that judges the other. So when you talk about, someone that's coming there and being prejudged based on if that is considered a trial and tribulation for them in terms of, their sexual orientations or interests, then the person that sits in judgment is actually the person that is creating the triangle, and the triangle having the point is the highest hierarchy of it. So if you were to come down to the basis of it, it's the sinner that walks into the churches that's more forgiven, because he's coming in there, he's broken and looking for spiritual guidance and growth, not to be ostracized based on me laying myself bare at the cross, right? So,
right. You know what? It's so funny because like when you said that, so I know that I'm a New Thought Christian now, so I think a lot differently than what I did when we were growing up in the church and things. And so, and even the people that I choose to our denomination or whatever, the UFBL, we don't even view sin the same way. So like for us, there is loving a person of the same sex is not a sin for us. A lot of the stuff that people like consider sin, like what we want people to focus on is your thought behind what your actions are. Because therein lies the sin. If you are, let's just say, stealing, okay? If you're stealing because you believe that there is lack, you have a lack mentality and you don't believe that there's enough for everybody to have, and you go and steal, that's the sin. It's not that you stealing the stuff, it's the fact that you have this lack. You don't believe God can take care of everybody. But let me take a break because we have another guest that's going to come in on our conversation. So just a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. Raquel Tosin, the host of Blessed, and I'm looking forward to a new and exciting season at WYTV7. This year we are going to still be talking to people who are blessed, who have made a decision to be blessed, because we all know that blessed is a mindset. It's not about what you have. It's not about who you have in your life. It is about waking up and making a daily decision to be blessed. It's all in your mind. What you think about is what you bring about. And what I'm trying to get you to bring about is being blessed. So join us every Wednesday on Facebook, and Thursdays, a new episode will drop for the podcast. Be blessed. Back. We're black. Oh, no, we are black, but we're back. So we're back with Tazima Parrish. She is a sex and intimacy coach from Evanston, Illinois. And, so we all are from Illinois. East St. Louis, Evanston, we all here. Illinois in the house. Welcome to Zima. But so you came in on our conversation about bisexuality in the Black community, about the church having a hierarchy of sin and making people feel like if they have relationships with the same sex, it's like the worst sin that you could ever have. But I'm going to read a section from the book that Mark actually wrote. He wrote for me. So this is when Liz finds out that the man that she loves and is about to marry is bisexual. And she, like most of the women I know in church, is having a fit. So when she goes to, now this is the funny part. She has a best friend who is a homosexual. But then she, and a lot of church women, they got their gay best friends. It really is like what is happening in America. So in the book, let me just read this. Liz, we've been friends for a long time. I love you, but you sound just a wee bit homophobic. Liz looks shocked and quickly asks, you do know I'm not, right? I know you value our friendship, but I know you, along with most Christians, have a real problem with same-sex relationships. Well, the Bible does say it's a sin, Liz shrugged. Now you sound hypocritical because the Bible refers to the sex you had with Anthony and the sex you had with Justice's dad as sin also. Touche. Right? There is no hierarchy of sin. Sin is sin. Why is my or Anthony's sin assigned such unimaginable and unforgivable disgust? Didn't Jesus die for all sins, or is there an exception to homosexuality? That was perfect. Tazima, you got to unmute yourself and tell me, because I see, what do you think about that passage that Mark wrote?
It really does reflect this entire, it's sort of like a paradox of some sins are okay or even justifiable while others are unforgivable. And it really is a reflection of whatever the sort of tone is of the time. If we take a look back at multiple sections of history where you have a role, especially if we take a look at indigenous cultures, no matter, like, around the world, not just people of color, not just brown people, I'm talking about any indigenous people, wherever they are, there is a space for bisexuality or homosexuality or people being gay or affecting the other gender or a different gender than they were born with. And so there's like a biological piece of it, and then there's this cultural piece of it, and we end up with this kind of paradox of what's okay, this hierarchy of sin. And it really is arbitrary. If this was, 100 years ago, there would even be maybe more response to this. But because of where we are right now, we're beginning to have some tolerance. We're beginning to have some space for homosexual people and trans or bi people. But there still is this, especially around bisexual men, there's like this offense that people take, like that is the worst somehow. And it's like women can be a little bit gay, but men can't be a little bit gay. Like it's,
Right.
it's either they are or they aren't. Whereas women can kind of slide, we got a slider.
Go back and forth.
And so then why is that? Why are women given more leeway to have, girlfriends or slip up or kiss someone or whatever, and that's okay because somehow we can be on the spectrum, but men can't. So
Right.
this intolerance is really a reflection of the hierarchy of our entire society. Not just inside of the Black community, a whole society. There are some things that are better than others. For example, a long-term committed marriage between a man and a woman is the best that you can do. And even better if you have kids. If you're a man, like I'm in a heterosexual marriage, but I get criticized, or it's kind of like people are like, oh, you don't have children? Like what's wrong with you? So there's like, so there are these pieces of like, oh, it's a shame that you don't have this going on, or it's too bad that you choose that. And my invitation, or the space that I'm coming from is like, who makes these rules? And why are these rules so critical to hold? Kind of, especially when they're so arbitrary.
Right. And right. And that and that is the thing. It's like, and we hold these things, and a lot of us we are miserable because of it. Like, so in the book, she could say no to this man and would be miserable that she's missing out on this great guy because of his past. And and then so the title is Undefiled because I didn't just want to keep it as his past. Not to say that he was going to want to bring a man into the bedroom, but he might have wanted to bring the toys to have the same feeling.
Yeah.
And, and people looked at me like, oh my gosh, I would never strap on. And so the whole idea of this book, I have to laugh because my cousin Mark is the reason why the book actually even popped into my head to do, because he asked me years ago, hey, Ray, I know you date so-and-so. I won't say the name. I heard he was gay. And I said, well, he's not gay because we do it. I said that. And then I said, and if he ever needed me to strap on, I would take care of him. Believe that. And it was crazy, but I think it was brunch and we was drinking. We were drinking champagne. We was having brunch. But I remember that. Mark, do you remember that conversation?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was the best, right? But, and it was crazy because that was years ago. And then I finally decided to write that book based on that conversation that we had. But can I tell you, I feel like I'm in the minority of Black women, especially, willing to use a strap-on in the bedroom, in my marriage bed, to take care of my husband. And people have looked at me like I was a crazy person. So Tazima, because you're a sex and intimacy coach, I need you to discuss that.
Absolutely. So one thing that I want to lay down a baseline of, part of the reason that religion is very cultural. On the one hand, yes, there are spiritual, the way I hold religion is that every religion is created so that the human beings who practice it can get closer to the higher power. There are many methods to get closer to the higher power. Some people think their method is better. Other people think their method is better. And that's that. Okay? I love undefiled. And even the term undefiled is that there's a certain level of freedom within an agreement of two people who are choosing to come together and experience something, maybe something sexual, maybe something non-sexual, maybe something social, whatever. Two people are coming together to decide. Maybe they want to bring a third. Maybe they want to bring a fourth. Maybe there's going to be a whole party. Not right now, but please social distance, please. But let's be real. Let's talk about not what is right or wrong, because that shifts and changes with the age. Let's talk about what two grown adults can agree with, and they can feel integrity in themselves about what they're choosing. Because even if, for example, when a woman is choosing whether this is okay with her, she's got to get to her space of, how can I have this be okay with me? Am I willing to be miserable and be right? Or am I willing to do the work that I have to do to deal with this particular kind of situation? I think it's tragic that people let the outside rules that other people make determine what they do inside of their marriage. We deal in supposed to's way too often. And what would be better and more healthy for us is to check with what's happening here. What's happening with me? What do I desire? What do I need? What's best for me? And make the decision from that space. And most people have dear hearts and are loving and awesome. And you can choose something that will, and especially if you have a conscious conversation with your partner, you can choose what would be best for you.
Well, Tazima, I have to stop you because we have run out of time, and we're going to have to just do a part 2 for this conversation because, oh my goodness, I need to go back to, some of the stuff that you said about history, because I'm like, that just blew my mind. So we are going to leave now, and we'll be back next week. So if you are enjoying this conversation, be back next week for part 2 with Mark and Tazima discussing Undefiled. Until next week, be blessed.